Get out, so this counts. Stop loading, stop loading.
Yes! It's finally over! Holy shit, that f***ing worked!
It is finally over. Thank goodness. I'm stoked to be able to bring you guys this video today. Now, don't get me wrong, this is something I've actually been excited to be able to give a go ever since I did this in Plugy. However, I've been dreading this at the exact same time because of the fact that I know how much more of a headache it would be in Diablo 2 Resurrected, comparatively speaking, to doing this in Plugy. There are going to be timestamps down in the description below for any of you guys that want to skip to a topic that interests you most, because there's going to be a lot of talking, a lot of explaining to do to be able to give you guys a better understanding of how this was able to happen. There is a lot to go over before we actually get into the gameplay, which I'm sure a lot of you guys are going to be here for the most, comparatively speaking to just hearing how this was able to work from start to finish. So again, there are going to be timestamps down in the description below. Use them at your discretion so that way you guys do not have to sit through the whole video if that's not what you choose to do. But for those that do, thank you very much. You guys are very appreciated. I'll make sure not to waste your guys' time. So let's get into this video. Welcome to my channels, everyone. Make sure you subscribe to both my Switch 209 and Switch 209 gaming channels so that way you stay up to date when my new Diablo 2 Resurrected content is going to come out. And welcome to today's video. This is a huge video for me. I'm again incredibly excited to be able to bring this to you, and it is huge not only just in the information I'm going to be giving you with all the talking points that are going to lead up to the eventual gameplay, but it's also just huge in the concept for which, again, I was not even sure was going to be possible in Plugy, let alone Diablo 2 Resurrected. We'll go over that in a little bit, but for any of you guys that are new to my channel, let's go ahead and get you guys caught up with some of the prior videos that led up to this one. Now, I have made a lot of videos that involved Ubers, from budget to endgame character builds, out-of-the-box ideas including a Valkyrie and a Mercenary soloing Uber Tristram, using Work's leg to kill Ubers during the Diablo 2 Resurrected alpha testing, and the recent Act 5 Mercenary soloing Ubers by himself from the minis all the way into Uber Tristram. I also have videos giving in-depth information on how to be able to separate the Ubers and overall survive easier for all builds in Uber Tristram, as well as a full beginner's guide of Uber Tristram for all versions of Diablo 2, going over stats, strategies, ideal pieces of gear to keep into consideration to be able to make your success in Uber Tristram that much easier, and much more. And lastly, the video that helped to inspire the one that you're watching now, the no gear naked summon necromancer taking on Uber Tristram in Plugy, from the minis all the way into Uber Tristram to be able to collect the torch. Now, I bring all those videos up not just for the shameless plugging, but comparatively speaking to all those videos, this one completely just blows all those out of the water. There is no competition when it comes to the extent of how incredibly difficult and big this video is compared to all those ones combined. Now, for the first of two comment shoutouts for this video, this one comes from Not Perfect Just Awesome, asking why I'm doing this in Plugy instead of Diablo 2 Resurrected. It's because at the time, I didn't have a PC to be able to play Diablo 2 Resurrected. I was stuck with what I had, which was a MacBook Pro that had Plugy on it, which I'm still thankful for just even having in general, because I was able to enjoy the game regardless. But I was able to continue to make you guys content, which is one of the videos that led up to this video you're watching now. And as soon as I was able to get my gaming PC, I dreaded the idea of actually taking on this task because it seemed impossible to be able to do, even for the best Summon Necromancer players. And without actually doing this in Plugy, I would still think this would be impossible. And speaking of, we're going to go over why I chose this character over all the other ones in this game. So let's go ahead and recap why I chose the Summon Necromancer over any other build that you'll be able to do.
Flashback.
Why did I choose the Summon Necromancer? When it came to thinking of characters that can actually do this run, I immediately just disregarded all of the melee characters because of the fact that they'd have to be up close and personal with the Ubers, making survivability just be thrown out the window, especially for facing Lilith, Duriel, and eventually Mephisto if they can even make it that far. From there, it left me with just the caster characters, and there were two important things I had to consider to be able to make this build work. One was the ability to have really good AoE, and or two, to be able to have summons so that way my character can play more of a support role. My first idea was maybe a Hammerden, however, that was quickly scrapped because yes, when it comes to both the Furnace of Pain and the Forgotten Sands, he does have a wide area to be able to cast his Blessed Hammers. However, when it comes to the Matron's Den, it's pretty much just like the Countess's Tower. You have very little room, and unfortunately because of the positioning, I would need to be able to cast the hammers. I barely got through the door before I was killed. And if just getting to the portal was bad, if I did make it to Lilith, she would easily one or two shot me before I can blink. And even taking into consideration, if I did make it to Uber Tristram, I wouldn't even be able to make it past Mephisto because of the fact that he would be able to hit me from such a long range. I would be dead before I even see him. From there, I thought of a previous video where I had my Amazon play more of a decoy role and had my Valkyrie and my Mercenary take care of Uber Tristram by themselves. However, in that video, I did take the blunt of most of the hits from my Mercenary so that way he would stay alive, but with no gear, I would not be able to survive at all. No matter how fast I tried to rejuice either for my character or for my Mercenary, we would die within seconds. Even before getting to Tristram, the Mercenary and Valkyrie combo wouldn't be able to handle Duriel by themselves. As you'll see in this video, with Decrepify, my Mercenary couldn't whittle down his health fast enough, and the Valkyrie, no matter how much she is buffed, wouldn't be able to do enough damage to be able to keep him from regenerating his health. So unfortunately, that idea is completely taken off the table as well. Considering the Druid, his summons wouldn't be able to do enough damage by themselves to be able to take on any of the mini Ubers, let alone Uber Tristram. The Assassin's Mind Blast may be something of consideration, however, it does have a time to wear off, and once it does, whatever you use Mind Blast on is now going to be able to target you, so it's not going to be something that would be sustainable even if you continue to Mind Blast. It's just not something that would work. The Sorceress? Unfortunately, even if you did have incredibly high damage for any one of the 3 skill trees, your FCR would be crippling the damage that you would do, as you would not be casting fast enough. Even with your Mercenary having Infinity, you would not be able to break the immunities enough to be able to do enough damage before the health of the Uber starts to regenerate, causing you to just constantly drink rejuves, give them to Mercenary, and eventually just die. And with all things considered, it left me with the Summon Necromancer.
End of flashback.
The reason this build was able to work in Plugy 1.3 where I did the original video is because that version has no minions when it comes to going to Uber Tristan to be able to distract my revives and my Mercenary from attacking the Ubers. Something that I greatly questioned at the end of that video, if it actually be possible in Diablo 2 Resurrected, because the minions change the difficulty of everything for a run like this. Because of the fact that not only are they just spawning all the time, but they randomly spawn around you and your Mercenary and your revives to be able to take the focus away from the Ubers for them to be able to regenerate their health and be able to make a run like this completely impossible. But the awesome thing about this build is, despite that it is very fragile, it is very simple by design. Yes, it is very slow, very painfully slow, but it's very effective for those who know to be able to play the character, especially that are more used to just doing a support role when it comes to playing on single player or on ladder. And Seer gives a really good explanation of the Summon Necromancer when it came to trying to find the best class of Diablo 2. I mentioned this in the previous video as well, but let's go ahead and check it out here.
Despite what annoying bastard guides will say, unless I'm just the worst player of all time and don't understand something, you just need so much stuff to break this build. Some guides suggest you don't need shit at all. Literally, you could be naked to be overpowered, but no, it's just not true. You don't need much to survive. That part's super true. You're really defended with this football team around you.
With this experience over the years of playing the Summon Necromancer, which I'm certain in the long run is a lot more than I have since the game originally came out, just like with my Act 5 Mercenary soloing Ubers by themselves, I wanted to go ahead and get his opinion on if he actually thinks this would be possible.
What do you think of a no-geared Summon Necro minus a Tele Amulet for repositioning in Tristram going through Ubers? I know you said he's one of the best classes and can be strong with little gear. Ooh, yeah, now that is probably the outer limits of what you can handle. No-gear Necro? I would be surprised. I don't know. I don't think that's possible. So, if you could prove me wrong, I'd be very impressed. That's perfect motivation. I'm going to give it a go. Again, thank you again for you, Seer, and all the chads in chat. Well, thank you. Have a good shot at that. I don't even know what to call it. The naked Necromancer Ubers run. You're actually like the only person I've seen try challenge Uber runs. That's fun to watch.
And just to be able to address this real quick before moving on, I didn't ask him or anybody else when it came to my prior videos if things like this would be possible to be able to get a
Got him!
It's not that serious.
Why so
Serious. Spelled with 2 E's.
I asked because I really do value the opinions of those with more experience than me, especially when it comes to a character that I'm not either very familiar with or just really suck at. And they could give me potential insight as to be able to make this process a little bit easier, or to be able to talk some sense into me to be able to help me realize that something like this is not possible, which I would agree with if I didn't have my prior experience when it came to doing this in Plugy 1.3. But even with that, the fact that there are minions in Tristram could be the make or break on something like this just being incredibly difficult to being completely impossible. Now I want to give credit to 3 specific videos that really helped me to be able to understand how to play this character in Uber Tristram a little bit easier, with one of them not even being a necro video, but was really nice to be able to show a trick for one of the Ubers when it comes to trapping them in a building. And the first 2 go to Skulm, because he has 2 different videos that go over a budget and an ultra budget Summon Necromancer to be able to go through and do the Ubers. And he has versions for with and without teleport, with and without a Torch and Annie, multiple different versions to be able to see how to be able to play the character a little bit easier, which was really helpful when it came to doing this entire project. The 3rd video goes to 9-Volt Gorilla, who again, it's not a necro video, but it was really nice to be able to see how to be able to get Baal to teleport into one of the buildings, which really limited his AoE, but also to be able to have his summons either not spawn or minimally spawn to be able to have more of a one-on-one with your character and him. But even with all the amazing tips, tricks, and resources that I was able to obtain from watching those videos, all of that was completely thrown out the window, and in its place was dumb luck. I'm gonna go over the attributes, the skill tree, the gear, and the part that I'm certain that all of you guys are really here to see, which is the gameplay. So let's go ahead and jump right into it. Looking at the attributes, I dumped everything into Vitality because we are gonna be using 1 piece of gear to make most of this run work, but it only has a level requirement. So no additional gear needing any strength means everything gets put right into Vitality to be able to help increase our health pool, because every little bit helps for a build like this. And looking at the resistances, you can see all of them except for poison, which again kind of goes with the one piece of gear we're going to use, and I'll go over that in a little bit. All of our resistances are absolutely trash. There is nothing that's going to be stopping us from taking the maximum damage when it comes to any elemental damage given to us. Looking at the additional stats, you can see that nothing is highlighted for FCR, FHR, or anything else for that matter that would be really beneficial to us to be able to get through this run. That's because this character is at the base minimum for everything that's needed for this project. For the summoning skill tree, we have 4 specific skills that need 20 heart points into it, with 1 heart point into everything else to be able to unlock them all except for Fire Golem. And the 4 main skills are going to be Skeleton Mastery, Raise Skeleton, Summon Resist, and Revive. The 2 most important skills from this tree are going to be Revive and Raise Skeleton. The Revives are there not only to be able to help a Crushing Blow, which I'll go over in a little bit when it comes to which specific Revives to get, they're also there to be able to help tank a lot of the damage for your Mercenary, so that way he can survive as easy and as long as possible, as he is going to be the sole source of having the Ubers not regenerate their health. Now, when it comes to the Raise Skeletons, they're there to be able to help get the good Revives at the very beginning, as well as to be a nice little army when it comes to surrounding the Revives, the Mercenary, and the Ubers to hopefully help when it comes to crowd control with the minions, as long as their AI IQ is above room temperature, which still might be giving them a little bit too much credit because they end up just wandering off and doing whatever they want.
You get back here, you pants! They are so dumb.
But it's also really nice to use them as a barrier between you and whomever you're fighting, so that way if any of the Ubers cast anything with good AoE, the Revives and the Skeletons can take most of the damage to be able to help you survive a lot easier. As far as the synergies, the Summon Resist and the Skeleton Mastery help to be able to make them more of a tank to again take most of the damage for your Mercenary, so that way he can again go get as many hits as possible to take the Ubers down. As I mentioned earlier, this build is very fragile but simple by design. And even without using gear that has plus to skills or anything else to boost your skills besides the hard points that are used, as long as you're able to let your Revives and your Mercenary do most of the damage, and you're able to stay out of range of melee attacks or any castings, and are able to make the necessary moves for repositioning any of the Revives and the Mercenary if they end up getting crowded in a certain particular area, this build was surprisingly viable for how vulnerable it was. For the Poison and Bone skill tree, that's more of a preference. You can make a case for none of these skills actually mattering, and I would agree with you to a certain extent. However, I wanted to try different things to be able to see how to separate out not the Ubers from one another, but the actual minions of the Ubers from the Uber itself, because of the fact that they were one of the parts that made this so difficult when they spawned so randomly and they surrounded me and my Revives and my Mercenary to be able to distract them and eventually kill me numerous times, and I wanted to see what could actually work. So that's why, yes, I did use Bone Armor. It did nothing, but it was more just so a mental thing to be able to see it and to know, okay, I can maybe take a quarter of a hit more and I'm not going to die, and it just was a confidence booster really. But as far as the Bone Prison, it wasn't used in anything that you're going to see in this video, but it did end up helping a little bit as far as seeing some of the minions, and I wanted to separate them out from the Uber. I had them get dragged to a certain particular corner, started running away, and then casted Bone Prison to be able to give me enough time to run away and not have them drag over with me. So that's why I used the hard points leading to Bone Prison. Now the last skill tree is going to be Curses, and I went the route of going from Amplify damage all the way to Decrepify, and you can make the argument to go to Attract and use that and Confuse for crowd control, but honestly, in my opinion, Terror did a lot better job, and it didn't cost any extra skill points to be able to unlock. Now, after I unlocked Decrepify, I went and put all the remaining skill points into Amplify damage for the specific Revives that I got. Decrepify is nice when it comes to trying to get the Revives that you need to be able to keep them at bay. And also when it comes to Mephisto, after you separate him out when you first enter Uber Tristram, I used Decrepify to be able to slow him down and to be able to get my giant army around him. And once they were in position to start knocking down his health, I would use Amplify damage to be able to help with just taking out his health a lot easier. It is really crucial to use that specific skill. And Terror really played a key role because I put all my remaining points into Amplify damage to be able to extend the duration for which the curse is used, so that way when any of the minions would start to pop up, I could just tear them away to be able to make it easier for my Mercenary to not get distracted and to be able to keep as many of my Revives focused on the Ubers as much as possible, which was again a godsend to be able to just use Terror to be able to get them far enough away, even if it's just for a few seconds. That may be the difference between that last little sliver of health and them actually dying. Now for the gear. You can see that I have nothing on Switch, and I'm only using one item, but it's a very specific item that I'm using. It's a Teleport Charge Amulet. Unfortunately, it did have a little bit of poison resistance. I tried to find ones that were plain, but unfortunately, this is what I had to use, and I wanted to make this as weak as possible to see if this actually could be possible. But when you really think about it in the long run, that little bit of boost to poison resistance is not going to make much of a difference. Now for the inventory, I did have a few items in there. I had my Tome of Town Portal, Tome of Identifications, the Hiraja Cube. The rest of it was filled with rejuves. I did not have a single charm in there. I did not use a torch. I did not use an Annie. I did not use anything to be able to boost my character up. I simply just had rejuves to be able to give to my mercenary or to use on myself to be able to survive a little bit easier. So this is as weak of a character as possible, as budget as it really gets as far as my particular character goes. Now, for the mercenary, I did have him be quite budget as well, which I know certain people are going to argue what really is budget versus what is not, but as long as you keep within a certain restriction as far as runes to be able to make rune words, I think this would be a little bit budget. So I do have him using a G-Face that is socketed with an IAS jewel just to be able to attack a little bit easier, as well as to be able to capitalize on the amazing stats that G-Face has on it. And for the body armor, it's one of my favorites. It's something that I praise in almost every single Uber video that I do, which is duress. And not only just for the amazing stats on it, but a very specific stat, which is the open wounds, because you need the Ubers to bleed. That is going to be the main source of keeping them from regenerating their health, and the mercenary needs this to be able to make this happen. And I saved the weapon for last because of a specific comment, which is the second comment shout out in this video, and he is using obedience. And the reason that I saved this weapon for last is because this comment talks about the last time I did this, coming from DKG Nate, saying that the mercenary was geared too good and could have just handled things all by himself without the help of the revives.
Stop the cap.
In the previous run on Plugy 1.3, I did use an infinity on my mercenary, and yes, it is very sought after and is very helpful. However, I just didn't have an obedience at the time to be able to give him. This comes from the Diablo fandom site, which states that infinity is not really helpful for those doing physical damage. And unless they changed something in the recent patches that they decided to slide under the rug that nobody noticed, I'm certain that everything is still the same as you would expect when it comes to Plugy for the use of infinity, which would really help when it comes to revives that do elemental damage, such as Pit Lords, the Frozen Creepers, or even the Beetles, I forgot what they're called. But they would be able to benefit from the Conviction Aura when it comes to using infinity, but really think about the damage that they're going to be doing to the Ubers versus the health regeneration that the Ubers would have. You would be getting such a minimal effort when it comes to the damage output versus the regeneration that infinity is not going to be helpful at all. Even when it comes to fighting Mephisto, his level conviction is going to override what comes on infinity. So the only thing that the weapon's going to really be benefiting from is the crushing blow and maybe a few other stats, but as far as the ability to lower the resistances, Mephisto is going to completely just negate that, and he's going to actually put his conviction on you. So yeah, I'll agree that the mercenary was geared a little bit better than he should have been back then.
You was so right.
However, when it comes to the demand of this build and what Infinity will be able to offer, it's not going to be doing anything that you really think it's going to be doing as far as giving me an advantage to be able to kill the Ubers, and the revives actually played as much of a role as my mercenary did. And as you'll see in this video towards the end, they really came in clutch. Speaking of revives, let's talk about the strategy they used to be able to make this happen. Now, one of the benefits of having little to no gear is, if you end up dying, there's not really much lost with it. Because of the fact that you don't need to go and retrieve your body, I ended up actually many times just taking off the teleport amulet, especially when it came to the Forgotten Sands to find Duriel and drag him over to the portal to make things a lot easier and to make my timing for summoning the revives to going and fighting him as minimal as possible. And also when it came to finding Lilith in the Matron's Den, I just wanted to go and see where she was, which took a little bit longer than I expected, but I just went in with no gear and just ran as far as I could to be able to find her, and had my character die after I opened a town portal to be able to make it to where I don't have to worry about picking up the amulet. I just had it in my inventory, and when I wanted to go and actually fight them, I'd put it on for convenience and then go from there. This is also an amazing way to be able to separate the Ubers if you actually feel that you want to do more of a one-on-one, and to make sure that the ranges for them not to be aggroed into another fight be as far as possible. Now, the revives that you need to be able to make this successful are going to be any version of Urdars, Maulers, Gorebellies, or Blunderbores, as their attacks not only have crushing blow, but they're able to stun. And there's a couple of really easy places outside of waypoints to be able to make this easy for you to start collecting them and to be able to have the times of them being revived to their death, whether it be from timing or just actually being killed by the Ubers, be as much as possible so that way you get the most use out of them. When it comes to the Blunderbores, you can find them outside the Frigid Highlands up north of the waypoint. You could also find them in the Palace Cellar level 1 and 2. As far as the Maulers, you can find them in the Endurance of Hate level 1 and 2. You can find them most of the time right outside the waypoint. And for the Urdars, I used the entire River of Flame to be able to try to collect them. As far as the scouting for this, I went through and wanted to go explore the River of Flame first, and I went through the City of the Damned waypoint and then went down to the real entrance, because using the River of Flame waypoint and then working my way back, I did have some choke points with some bridges right outside of the waypoint, which made it to where my timing, other revives that I wanted, was going to start to dwindle down a little bit too far for my liking, and I'd have to sacrifice them for hopefully getting something better down the line, as well as it made it to where traveling across the bridges and even using terror to be able to get things to scatter away was not effective enough. So I wanted to be able to have as open of an area as possible, which is why I decided to start at the actual entrance to the River of Flame, because it gave me more area for me to walk around, as well as my mercenary to be able to get around anything that was undesirable and to be able to kill the revives that I really need. The maps that I couldn't have, and unfortunately had to use the save and exit to be able to try to roll for better monsters, were ones that had the maggots or the grotesque, because they would be able to have the little worms. As far as the baby maggots or whatever they're called, I really don't care. But when they spawned, it made it to where reviving the actual revive that I wanted was a lot more of a pain and more of a process, because you typically would have to go through more of the actual maggots or the grotesque worms to be able to get the revive that you desire. So it made it to where it was just more of a burden than it was worth, and I'd have to unfortunately save and exit to be able to roll a better map with better monsters to be able to make this work. Something else that I actually overlooked, and it was really nice to be able to have, were stranglers. And the reason for that is, when it came to reviving them, they could actually move a lot more freely than any of the other monsters could, and they ended up being pretty good crowd control as far as some of the minions that spawned farther away from the Ubers. And it made it to where I could have the actual main revives that I really wanted focus, while some of the stranglers I only revived maybe about 4 to 6 at most if I could. And they really did help when it came to crowd control, staying far away, so that way any of the summoned minions will be able to focus on them, and I could focus on just the task at hand with the main revives and my mercenary. An alternate choice for your revives, in case you can't find any Urdars in abundance that you'd be able to need, or you unfortunately just burn right through them, are going to be the versions of the Thorned Hulk or the Thrashers, because their attacks are going to be very similar to Frenzy. Now you can find these mostly in Act 3, such as just outside the Lower Kurost, in the Kurost Causeway, as well as Upper Kurost. You can get really lucky finding them south of the Frigid Highland waypoint, with more of an abundance of them being closer to Shank. Once I knew I had plenty of revives in my game after scouting the aforementioned areas, I went to Neolithac's portal and started reviving the skeletons to be able to start the army to start killing all the versions of Urdars I would need. From there, because the skeletons were not on a timer, I went to a vendor and started buying as many of the thawing and antidote potions as possible to be able to give not only to my character, but you can actually give them to your mercenary, which is going to be really helpful to be able to boost up your resistances, especially when it comes to fighting Lilith and Mephisto. Unfortunately, it's not going to be enough to be able to negate anything, but just any additional help with your resistance is going to be really beneficial in the long run. Also, what's nice about this is you can drink as many as you want, and all the timers are going to stack up. So that way, for me, I try to do 4 to 5 rows of the potions and drink them all at once to be able to have the time go as high as possible, so that way I would not have to worry about anything when it comes to going and fighting any of the minis, and especially when it comes to going to Uber Tristram. I could just simply focus on the task at hand to be able to help my revives and my mercenary do as much damage as possible and keep myself alive without worrying if my resistances are going to drop to make me even more vulnerable than I already was. From there, I went and collected all my revives, and this is where, unfortunately, I'm actually fighting the hardest fight of this entire project, and that's against time. And the reason for that is, even with the max hard points of 20 being invested into revives, they'd only be able to have 3 minutes worth of being revived before they either die from timing or just die of fighting any of the Ubers. So I needed to be able to make use of the time that I had with them, and unfortunately when it came to collecting them, I don't know why, but I would see an Urdar drop, and then maybe 1 to 2 seconds later, the body was gone. All the favorable revives that I wanted, unfortunately, were a lot harder for me to be able to collect, and this led to me having to, unfortunately, revive them early. You usually want to have as many of them dead as possible and revive them all within the same time period, so that way they are going to all drop at the same time, but they're going to last as long as possible. And unfortunately, that was just thrown out the window in certain cases where I had to revive some of the more favorable ones in hopes that I would find a bigger group of the more desirable revives to be able to start having a bigger army and to be able to reset the timing for them, so that way they would be able to last a little bit longer than the previous one that I'm using to be able to continue to collect the revives that I really want. However, this strategy was not used when it came to fighting Izual. I didn't even use my teleport amulet when it came to trying to fight him because, one, the teleport charges are quite expensive, but also I just wanted to have the monsters in there be the army that I used to be able to fight him, and because there were so many leading up to him, I was able to resupplement the army constantly when it came to the revives and also the skeletons that I would need. And from there, we just swarmed Izual and eventually took him out with ease. However, Izual is the exception to the rule, as when it comes to going against any of the remaining minis, and especially the Ubers in Tristram, the Urdars or any variations of them are going to be essential to be able to make it happen because, as I stated before, I'm not using any other items to be able to make this run happen. I'm not using Demon Limb for the enchant charges. I'm not using CTA for the battle orders buff. I'm not using Beast for the Fanaticism aura. I'm using absolutely nothing. So time is the utmost importance to be able to make this work. Speaking of time, as far as showing the gameplay, this is not going to be like I did when it came to doing this on Plugy 1.3 with a lot of sped up parts and being able to show all the farming for all the revives in between all the Ubers, because it took this long for me to be able to do.
What?
Which is why at the beginning of the video, and even now looking behind me, you could see the collection of the revives being sped up to be able to show you guys that yes, I did go through the entire process, but it is something that I'm not trying to waste your guys' time for. This video is already going to be pretty long as it is. So this video is pretty much going to be a how-to build guide and a highlight video all in one. And for any of you guys that watch highlight videos when it comes to doing X amount of runs at this particular boss or this particular area, you guys typically don't see the lead up to the actual highlighted moment. You guys are familiar with seeing just the moments that actually matter when it comes to the kills, getting the item and identifying it. Well, this video is not going to be any different. I'm just going to be focusing on the parts that actually matter, which are the lead up to and eventually the kill of the Ubers. And I want to be completely transparent with all of you. This was not done in one run. If there was no way for me to be able to do the Plugy version in one run, there's absolutely no way in Diablo 2 Resurrected that's going to happen. However, the minis actually this time were done in one run. Then I had to save and exit to be able to do the actual Uber Tristram run because I wanted to have more of an abundance of Urdars so that way that could be a little bit easier for me to be able to complete this project. I personally still feel it counts because if any of you guys have actually done a playthrough getting any character through normal, nightmare, and hell difficulty, if you have done a save and exit to be able to save yourself from either losing experience, to not have to die in an area that you would not be able to retrieve your body, or just simply have an unfavorable map, go to a different difficulty, and then re-roll the map back into the difficulty you're playing, honestly, if that can count for you, I feel that this should be able to count for this particular project, especially with how incredibly extreme it is with only one piece of gear being used to be able to do a run through Uber Tristram with a character. The last point I'm going to make before I actually get into the gameplay is, yes, I did end up actually killing the Ubers and Tristram in one run, once, and it took this long to be able to do. And there's so many different factors that contributed to this, such as having to get my Mercenary back numerous times to the point of having to farm for gold because I ran out of it to be able to get him back. Also, I had to go get new revives constantly because, again, there's only a 3-minute timer for them to actually be active. So I had to go and actually scrape the bottom of the barrel to be able to get the variants of the Urdars that I needed, even to the point of having to contemplate going to the Talrasha tombs to be able to get the gore bellies that are in there. Thank God I didn't actually get that bad. Because I had to go in and out of Tristram numerous different times to be able to make this run work, I'm not going to show that run in its entirety at all. The reason for it is the pacing of having to speed it up by so much and having so much filler of going to get the revives, back to the Ubers, doesn't work. Go get more revives, Ubers, doesn't work. It's not necessary to be able to show it, and I'm just going to show the best of the kills that I got for all the runs leading up to the final run where I finally got through Uber Tristram completely. And the method I went was Mephisto first to be able to get rid of his conviction aura so that way it's not affecting me while I fight the other Ubers and have a ton of minions around me. The next would be to go to Baal because his festering appendages were really annoying, and especially when it came to trying to go to Diablo first a couple times, his festering appendages when Baal was around would just start popping up and start attacking myself and my Mercenary and distracting my Mercenary and having me to not focus on the fight, and unfortunately it wouldn't work. So Baal was number 2. Lastly, Diablo was number 3 because his minions were the most annoying in my opinion compared to speaking to the others, so to be able to have them only be active at the end of the fight was more ideal. I can completely understand that there will be people that will question the authenticity of this video because I will not be showing all the mini Uber kills all in one run I was able to do, as well as the one run I was able to get through Uber Tristram with this character. I'm going to be showing the highlights of those kills from this point forward, and you can believe whatever you want, the ending does speak for itself. And I hope you guys will enjoy the video regardless of the most budget character that you can take through Uber Tristram. Let's go ahead and check it out.
Time to kick ass and chew bubble gum. And I'm all out of gum. Let's rock. You guys suck. Damn, that was annoying. See you in hell.
Oh my god. It's over! It's over! Get the torch, get the torch. Oh wait. I can't. That's right. I'm gonna go swap out my other one from my inventory.
Bruh.
Bro, what are you still fighting me for? You're fighting in his dishonor. I just killed him with no gear. Besides the teleport amulet. Okay, grab the body. Teleport charge. We need to get the hell out of here. Alright, let's go. Come on, got the torch. Get out, so this counts. Stop loading, stop loading. Yes! It's finally over! Holy shit, that f***ing worked! I can't believe that worked! Wow! Oh, that took so long! Finally it's over! Finally just go to bed. Wait, how did the torch roll? Not terrible. I mean, it's a necro torch. Can't be mad at that. And that's going to wrap it up for the video. I hope you guys enjoyed it and were able to see just how powerful the summon necromancer can be with absolutely little to no gear at all. and to see that there is now a new bar set for the cheapest build that you can take through some of the hardest endgame content in Diablo 2 Resurrected. Now, this is a world first. I haven't found any articles, videos, forums, or anything of the sort to be able to prove that anybody else has done anything like this in the game prior to my video coming out. Granted, I know there's going to be a lot of people that are going to be critical of the fact that it wasn't done in one run, going through all the minis, and then going through all the Ubers and Tristan to be able to finally get my torch. Granted, this is such an extreme build to be able to do something like this with. I feel there should be an exception for a build like this to be able to do it in more than one run, but even if they don't want to count it, honestly, I don't care. This was fun to be able to finally bring to this game after doing this in Plugy and seeing just how difficult it was back then with no minions to now actually have minions in Diablo 2 Resurrected and still be able to get the same type of results to get my torch with a character that I actually started with back when Diablo 2 first came out, the Summon Necromancer, and to show just how powerful this character can be with so little to even no gear at all, and to be able to show just how budget the actual lowest budget can really be when taking on endgame content that people love to this day. If you like this kind of content and want to see more, hit the subscribe button on both my Switch 209 and Switch 209 gaming channels so that way you stay up to date on my new Diablo 2 Resurrected content is going to come out. Also, if you enjoyed the video, please let me know by leaving a like. It really is appreciated, and it goes a long way to be able to help these channels to grow, as well as to get this in the algorithm to as many people as possible, because this was such a big project that I hope other people are going to be able to enjoy it as well. Other than that, if you want to see more of my Diablo 2 Resurrected content, there's going to be a card in the corner up above for you to go and click to be able to see even more videos than this, especially when it comes to Uber content. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.
But I'm not done yet.